Welcome to DTV. I'm joined by Chris Dawes today, and it's exciting to chat to the new recruit for Melbourne. And Chris, great to have a chat to you at last. You've been at the club for a couple of weeks now. How are your first impressions?
Oh, well, I suppose, yeah, as you say, that first couple of weeks I've just been settling in, finding my feet. My first impressions of the club, I think footy clubs are all pretty similar, but one thing that really strikes me about this group is the high standards they've set for themselves. Set some really high benchmarks in training. Everybody seems to have come back in really great shape from their breaks, and speaking to coaches and players, it sounds like we're really sort of breaking those targets that we've set, which is a really positive sign.
Yeah. You made the big move and the decision. How difficult was it? And I guess, was there a moment where you thought, I do want to play for Melbourne?
Yeah, I suppose it took me a bit by surprise, just getting a phone call that effectively let me know, that Collingwood was willing to trade me, and so my decision-making process was to try and take the emotion right out of it, because when it was all raw, there was a whole range of emotions I was going through. So I took a few days, spoke to my family and my partner and my close friends at Collingwood about it, just to try and sort out what I thought was going to be best for my football going forward. And it didn't end up being that until I'd been overseas for about a week with my girlfriend, and we talked about it. We had my manager who was dealing with clubs down here, and ended up being that I met with a couple of clubs, and Melbourne seemed the most attractive prospect, and from there it was just about trying to make sure that there was a trade that could be done for me to get here.
It's a really big time for players to decide their careers during trade week or trade period now. You've sort of touched on it, but I mean, as an actual person to go through all that process, I mean, how difficult is it? I mean, I think some people don't realise the enormity of it to actually make a decision like that.
I hadn't either, and I didn't even think it would affect me that much until I realised that once I went away, I'd sleep for about 2 hours and then I'd be wide awake and couldn't stop thinking about football and where I was going to be playing my football next year, because there was also I had to choose between clubs, one of which was Collingwood, and there was a strong case to say I'm better off staying at the club I'd been at, that I declared my loyalty to a year before. But it ended up being that, given I was able to think about it for so long, I think I've made the best decision, which is to come to Melbourne, come to a young, fresh playing group, and a group that I can hopefully have a really positive influence on, and and especially the chance to work with Mitch Clark up forward. I think we're going to create a pretty strong tandem up there.
Yeah. Can you sort of talk about Mitch? You've obviously met him for a couple of weeks now, and Demon supporters are pretty excited to see the both of you up there.
I can see why they're excited about him, because I thought he was playing some fantastic footy last year until he got injured. Because prior to that year, I thought that too much of a deal was being made of him, and Melbourne probably paid overs for him. And then when I saw him come out and play in a side that was struggling, I was really blown away. And that was a big part of my wanting to come to Melbourne, was the chance to play alongside such a talented forward like Mitch. And he and I have been in a similar boat. We're not quite back on the track fully yet, but hopefully we can sort of develop a bit of synergy over the rest of the pre-season, and come round one, we'll hopefully be both firing.
Yeah. And of course, some good relationships with Mark Neal and Lee Brown. Just from your own sort of words, can you talk about how you sort of work with them at Collingwood?
Yeah, well, I suppose at Collingwood with Lee Brown, who's now my forward line coach, we played in a premiership forward line together, so there was a strong connection there. But as part of my decision-making process, when I was looking at potentially new clubs during the trade period, one of the biggest things was being able to work with Nealdy. And I also looked at working with Mick Malthouse again, but who I would say is one of the greats of modern day coaching, and to get someone like Nealdy, who was a pupil of his for a number of years and his most senior assistant, I thought was just too good an opportunity to miss.
Yeah. How were those conversations? Was Mark pretty influential in bringing you across in the end? Was he perhaps the one that made the decision easy?
Yeah, certainly being able to speak to him. He and I had a great relationship as it was, so it wasn't about trying to reconnect in any way like that. It was more, the conversations were much more about playing lists, my role within that, all that sort of thing, because we already had that strong relationship to begin with.
Yeah. Now at the media conference, when you joined the club, you sort of touched on the leadership, and that could be an area that you'd look at, developing your game at the club. Can you sort of talk about those areas?
Yeah, well, I suppose when I first spoke about it, it was day one at the club, so I didn't want to be saying too much other than that I've always had an interest in leadership, and I feel like if there's something I can offer this group, then I'll certainly put my hand up for that. At this stage, again, it's been 2 weeks and I haven't been training with the main group all that much. That said, I've been trying to lead as best I can with whatever it is I am doing, be it in meetings or in rehab sessions, those sorts of things. I think later on, probably closer to Christmas, leadership groups will start to get worked out and formed, and we'll just see what happens from there.
Yeah. Now at the moment you've got a bit of a calf niggle. How's that going?
It's just frustrating. Being at a new club, all I want to do is be out there on the training track, getting to know the boys and trying to earn their respect, and at this time of year the only way you can do that is by training well, and obviously come next year then it'll be about doing the right thing in games. So it's frustrating, but it's certainly not anything to worry too much about. It's just the time of year that it is. We're going to take a really cautious approach with it, because there's no use rushing back into training and risking further injury with it.
Yeah. And just looking ahead to next year, what are your sort of personal goals?
Well, I think the number one thing will be getting this team into finals. Yeah. And personally, I think I've just got a responsibility to look after my own game and my own body as best I can, and then in terms of influence on the group, it'll all be about leading and playing my role and trying to drag the best out of people that we can, and getting this group back up to finals, which is where I think we belong. Yeah.
All right, well, great chatting to you, Chris, and welcome to the D's. I know there's a lot of people keen to see you in the red and blue, so we'll look forward to watching you play in 2013.
Cheers. Good on you.